Okay.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Good morning.
How are you?
A bit tired.
How was yesterday?
What was yesterday? No, yesterday was nothing. The day before we had the guests. I mean, from the
I
school.
thought it was yesterday, so it was one day before.
Yeah.
And that went well?
Mm. He was really interesting. Christian, the teacher. He was. It was so funny. He was so into the oscillator. You know this pattern, like the stripes that we always use.
Yeah.
And he started to like analyze. Well, obviously that's kind of really present in the space, and then he started like analyzing, like this is like continuous gradient without an edge that, I don't know, implies something,
Right.
or it goes
Right.
well with this like smooth paper,
Yeah.
which also doesn't have an edge.
Yeah. But I guess like the guy has a point, like I was thinking that, with Hydra you can do so many things, but at the end just they very fast go into madness, right? That if you find the right not too much thing that works for whatever you need to do with it, so if you find the not too much thing that is performative in respect to what you're doing, then you have something um, uh, that is communicative. That's what I'm trying to say, like, because if the matter is trying to communicate with other people, then reducing the glitches works. So I'm saying this is just because I can understand, yeah, like why just the entry oscillator works, it's just simple. Depending what are you using that for, it might be just that what you need. Although you can do so many things. And I think in that regard is no different than in dance. Like great dancers, like actually when I learned that when I was like 20 something, that choreographers, they want to work normally with more mature dancers, because although they say that physically maybe they might not be in their peak, but already mentally they are mature. So maybe they don't need to do the 4 pirouettes, but maybe they just do one, and that was enough because they do it. It just works for what they need. So it's just this idea of the technique, and then what are you using the form? What is the purpose of the form?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And this should be the public chat. This should be uploaded.
This should
I
be
know we have to
uploaded.
do some office stuff, but I don't know. Should
Yeah.
we just continue with the public chat, or is
We could we can continue with the public chat for a little bit. Yeah, let's do it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I was looking at your how do you say it? Report, journal, paper,
Yeah, I think the good name is like journal.
journal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like in terms of like because it's funny, like this word journal is like one can be like my journal, like I write about myself. But on the other hand, the journal can be like academic journal, which is like a compiled text of academic papers,
Yeah.
which is also
Yeah.
called journal, which is like completely like different end of the spectrum. And yours can be like both at the same time.
Yeah.
So I wrote to you, or I sent you a message before, but basically I looked into it, and then I thought like if, well, we know that if we want to publish a paper from this, I think we need to like really work on it. So I just went through and put like little editing just for the grammar or like this
Yeah. So
really
yeah,
small stuff, so that it
yeah,
might
so
help if you
yeah,
put it online. But I didn't go through the content because that's something. Well, maybe we can talk about it now. But yeah, I feel like it's so interesting, but also this idea of communication is really difficult. I guess also depends on who you want to talk to, or like
right,
what's the context of this the target audience.
right,
And but I also feel like whoever the audience is, like you have to explain a lot of things, a lot of background, because if you start with the idea of someone who already know about tech and dance, that's like really limiting the audience, right? So you have to like if it's for tech people, you have to explain a lot about,
dance,
well, dance or choreography. And if it's
yeah,
for dance
choreography,
people,
the other way
well,
around.
if it's for dance people, it's even more difficult because you have
You
to
cannot, you
explain all
can,
these
you have
things
to
about
start
what,
like
yeah.
going every time that you mention something, you have to tell them, you have to mention what is it, what is not.
Yeah. What is touch
Yeah.
designer? What are those lines? What's the coordinate space?
Oh my God. Imagine, wow, imagine that. Yeah. So yeah, but I definitely think that it's a good idea to do this exercise of the interview, because that will be the easiest way to work actually together on that.
Mm,
Um, yeah, and then we can take our time in how we do that.
yeah,
Then we don't have to force ourselves like, okay, there's a deadline. Um,
right.
on terms of like what is the paper, yes, as I mentioned, then I just need to upload something in Medium.
Yeah.
I will do it as fast as I can. I mean, in between 2-3 weeks is where I will have I would like to work on the comments and then do something with it. And then after, so then another thing is like work on the paper, like just a classical paper with Florian. And I don't know how realistic is this, but I would like to have a finished version that I can submit to the academic open call in the Festival de la Imagen, which is the 5th of August. I have no experience working on this in this context, so I don't know how realistic is this. I have to see.
I have no idea. I mean, also depends on who you're working with and how much time you
Yeah,
have. And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Like, but if I remember, like when I have like this small feedback at the end when we have this conversation with Florian, he said like when we talk about like, okay, maybe you should just write a completely different paper from this. And but he was underlying, he said like you have it there, but just you have it basically in the conclusions, he was saying. And he said like just we have to do it. I think that will be his approach, more like what you found from conclusions basically.
Mm, yeah.
So taking away a lot of the in between, I guess, a good introduction and then conclusions. That's the way how I felt it.
Yeah,
While in
basically
my,
because you need to kind of find the conclusion, like what you're aiming for, and then based on that you have to build the story, the narrative.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, I really see like this, the journal you have is like it's like a salad bar that you have like all these things already there, but you have to put it on your plate and you have to present it nicely
yeah. And
that people can
already in
understand.
this, in what I present already, I took away a lot of compromising things, like complicate things around annotations and
Mm,
scores. I found a way to just like say like, yeah, I do the decisions where we're good at with annotation, something simple like that, but not really
mm,
go in depth into, I mean, things that I wrote in the previous version that I extend a lot in trying to explain something that we mentioned that once we were like talking like at 11 in Minds, so we were trying to talk about these ideas.
I just remember this plushie in the background, this cow or something
The
from the
cow, yeah,
chocolate
the
brand.
milk cow. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I did it. So I took away a lot of this stuff and also some personal remarks like about like, yeah, some things. So I was trying to just like make it just I guess, quite technical somehow.
Mm.
Not getting too much into the other domain, because then otherwise it meant that I have to really explain myself. What does that mean?
Mm.
And that's not the point what I'm doing right now. At least in that paper. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also, but it's also good to like keep some of the text that's like your notes. Like when you discover something, you just write it like really like a personal way instead of like kind of reflection of what happened. But okay, like this happened. Yes, like this. But I think it's really like good to keep it like somewhere in the paper, like just to kind of cite. It's like more like citing your journal inside the article to kind of trace what you found, what was the frustration, um, because I think that's also kind of like a really valuable part of the story. That like what is your discovery like and how you found like why you had the frustration and how you solved it, because that's kind of overlooked in academic research often. Like you have to spend time on annotation or cleaning up data, and people don't really mention that, but it's actually valuable process, especially when you are artist and I don't know technologist or programmer at the same time.
Yeah. This is funny because then, so I have this interview with the performance in Linz in Ars Electronica on Monday. And
Mm.
then, so when we were talking and discussing about the budget, then they said, okay, so this is the budget. If you want to move more budget, one way will be if you take care also of the programming and development. And I was like,
Mm.
no, I'm not gonna do that. Because, and this is really it comes from my experience being in motion band. I felt like that will become something else. I don't want to do that. I just want to be 3 months thinking, of course, I will be involved, and then I guess working close with the developer. But I don't want to do that process. Like I want to focus in the choreographic aspect. Like yeah. And this I think comes from the experience with this is one of the conclusions, by the way, in that paper. It says like, if there is a budget, like I said, if
Mm.
in projects that involve dance and technology, like you must have budget to pay for somebody else who's dedicated in clear the services. If what you're working towards is a deadline, let's say, if it's like, for instance, in our case, like we are both things, and it's the proposal is do this, so it's an ontological process. We don't really have a deadline. But if you have a goal and there is some deadline, then then should be budget for somebody who is worried and working on that. Then it gives freedom and a space for the artist to just do the artistic thinking within understanding. Because again, that's part of this was one of the things that I sent the paper at the beginning, but I guess I did not develop. Like one of my early proposals, or was an assumption, was saying that there is a difference between the choreographer who uses services from a technologist as a translator, and so a person who doesn't really speak the language, and then uses a third person as a translator, with the choreographer developer, the one who can yeah, take two roles at the same time. So I think that's that.
Mm.
I think it's like that, put it at the beginning of the paper. Maybe actually I can just see it, and because it says it's early, and when I was in Berlin, when I was proposing what I'm gonna do.
Okay. Ah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it says choreographing thinking during mapping process. Myself having a background in dance and with the current knowledge in technology, I am trying to prove that the act of dance, the choreographic thinking during dances, affect the mapping values. Being the dancer and the coder at the same time influence the mapping process. If so, then coding mapping after dances leads to an embodied code, which is like a big word basically. And that was the way why I started. Like I was trying to prove that being developer and being the choreographer, it should lead to embodied code, which are words that we use very often also in our framework. But then how you can prove that, right? So I put it at the beginning. So I didn't follow up really into that, but was with that. But what I did found is, and it's one of the conclusions, like, dude, if you can avoid to be in that entangled, you should avoid it. Or I think there are two things that I'm kind of trying to say here. One is that it's about, I think this is an interesting thing, I think, for framework, is like, this is a postulate that I think that this is what we're working. We are saying that we embodying code, that we work towards embodied code. If so, then how? How can you argue that? And then you need to find good arguments conceptually and technically, right? And then communicate them and following them up in a yeah, maybe I don't want to use the word classical sense, but in a scientific way or an academic way, then the other people can follow and can basically maybe argue. And
Yeah, I think that's the kind of difficult part of your research, that it's like in a more like a classical sense, you have to find the best practices, right? That you want to say that, okay, here's the best practice if you want to work with Capture and VR, for example. But I think more of the like the statement is that you show how you worked with it, like how worked on it. Like it's a process, and it's like not the way how you visualized or like how you set up the system, but it's about like what was the progress, and like how you deal with like when you face technical problem, or like how you bypass something with the I don't know, like you always have technical problems, and then it can be solved with movements, or it can be solved by using other program. But this kind of way of working with two different, like you have to navigate through the move, like choreographic thinking and the technical perspective.
yeah,
That is the practice, I think.
but I think, like, so going back to what I was saying, I think is, and then that's why I was referring to this interview with the performance with Johannes Kepler University in Linz, is because, so when they asked me, when we were negotiating about this budget, right? And then I wanted to understand, like, okay, what do you guys want? Is this a service that I'm providing where I'm just delivering a performance? What are the expectations? These things that we talk at your house back then in Dortmund. So it was very, very clear the way how they basically said that they don't really understand what I mean, that basically they're trying to do, they're trying to approach the project within what I believe, so that is an honest way to trying to integrate art and science, where as an artist, I'm not just delivering a service to use aesthetics into something that I don't understand, right? Science, but they try to just really put the artist and then trying, so in being in conversation with the artists and then the engineers, and then they as academics seeing, basically they see as a third person who is following the process. And that's part of a theory, the sense-making theory that Claudia, the head of this PhD research, she writes about. One of the things that she writes in her paper is like, in this sense-making process, when you are in the intersection of art and science, since both people have different expectations, one, it's good to have a case of use, clearly, that you are developing a robotic arm or a robot tattoo robot arm, for instance, like you have a case of use where it liberates us. So it's what we use this sentence of like, it just is a way to bypass the politics. You know, you don't have to get into like nitty gritty of, is this a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Say somebody else put it there. If somebody else put it there for you, it's actually even better because you're just there called to work. So engineers or scientists and artists, they come both towards working into something that it might not be their first thing. So there's one thing, like you need a case of use. Second, if possible, more actually, if you're at the beginning of these sense-making processes within or transdisciplinary processes, you need a third person who actually works as a mediator between the two. Yeah. She also said, and she argued afterwards, that it doesn't have to be always necessary, but it will help very much the production line and everything from both perspectives, because the people feel they will easily speak out, right? Like, which is the problem that we have in dance and technology when you think about technicians and artists. The people don't, and that's more in relation with technicians. Technicians don't speak out because they're hired by the artist. So normally there is this status of the artist knows and the technician doesn't know. So the technician normally is not really speaking because it doesn't have this the sense making process, which is defining basically is in a social relationship, basically how we in groups, we make sense of the environments we are, and we define maximums and minimums and things that how we interact basically in different contexts. I think that's at the core of that. It's just the way how we make sense of things and how we incorporate, and without speaking to each other, say like, this is normal, this is not normal. And when somebody comes new to the team, we understand this is weird or not, without the need to ask, because we are saying we are making sense for 2 years together. So I think that's at the core of sense making. And so yeah, so by going back to this, then maybe just to make it short is, so then it's easy when you have a third person, then brings agency for the engineers and for the artists. They can just speak out, and this person in between, it has to modulate the speech to take things away and then to communicate what the person thinks it must be communicated. So Claudia argued after in this research paper that it's not necessary. Like she just said, like, if people have already experience in this sense making between art and science, then perhaps they can do it by themselves. So they can start talking to each other, and ideally that will be a more direct way, because there is no meta information lost, because there is no selection of what information should pass, right?
Right.
But nevertheless, again, she's going back and say, like, if it's just more practical, you know, if you have a deadline, then going back to this, if you have a deadline, there's a production line and stuff like, and there's money budget, just allocate some money for the third person who can take care of that. And I'm saying that in regards to, then we were again to what I start talking about, the budget, and they were asking me, we can pay you more if you want to take care of the development, right? And then I thought, like, first thing was like, no, you know, like, no, because of the experience actually in Motion Bank. And then I thought, like, I would just actually just take care of the artistic thing. I also speak the language, so it will be, I guess, a close collaboration with the development team. But yeah, it's not going to be my call. But after, I was thinking also when we finished the conversation, and then I was thinking that this seems like a great opportunity for me to experience art and science in a different way who I have experienced so far with seeds, for instance. It seems like a very honest, as I call honest way, how they're trying to approach this with Claudia. They, for instance, like, they don't know even if they want to open the performance for public, because they will go very slow. They will just go very slow, and in communication with the artists and then the engineers, and basically they will be in a way like leading, but constantly in conversation. So there are no things defined. which is close to how we work in art, right? But they do have a deadline. So that's why I decided to, if, for instance, if the process will be open-ended and said like, I will have, instead of 3 months, 6 months, or a year, I will say like, maybe I will be interested in taking part of the development as an ontological research and going back to actually what you and me are interested, right? The embodied machine. That's the framework of this one specifically, the embodied machine. But because there is just a 3 months time, it's just not, it's not going to be the case. It's not practical.
Right. I mean, again, it depends on what you have to deliver. Well, deliver. Like, is it like a product, or is the research as a outcome? That's maybe that, then it's okay. Like how we work basically. But also they
Yeah.
have the, yeah, like the people, how they say, the funders or whatever, that's their framework of their funding. So I guess you have to deliver something
Yeah.
that
So,
works.
like, so now it's clear, for instance, that they have three performances. And one is like already is happening, and the second one at the end of December, and the next one before of June. So the first one actually is just, I mean, I'm using my own words, right? They have their own words, and she was very picky in repeating, you know, like she has her own words that are being argued in a paper, right? So I'm just using my interpretation of what they said. The first one is in a way like to create awareness of those who are not yet work not only with robots, but with what they call digi-twins, this digital representation of human tasks, basically. And so first, like create awareness with different stakeholders, and then they take performers as the people who are going to interact with these systems. So this is for sure is not going to be open, and they are in this process now of working with different systems, not necessarily only with robots, but it's just different things. The second one is focused on aesthetics, and that will be where, like, if you want to call it like the artistic thing, in a way can be, or the form, shape, the artistic, the focus is on aesthetics and art. And the third one, that is when I'm going to participate, it seems there is the most complex, because it's where I call, it seems to me that is like they're trying to create of the third one an emergent experience, where the systems they have, and they still are also in negotiation with who is going to also, what are the which labs are collaborating. Then I know what is the tech writer, basically, for me to start thinking. So, but basically they want them to work in close collaboration with the artists and the engineers to create something that not necessarily has to be a performance. It not necessarily has to be a performance for people to see, that has to be seen on the process, but the performance should work as a way to help to see people who are working with these systems, that there are different ways to approach these systems, these machines, basically, and that there is something that they can take from my artistic experience, basically. So there is, if then when there's public, so other scientists, so people who are not involved in the project, but people who they're going to be invited, so the stakeholders, so that those people, and they're from an executive levels, that they see the potential of why this actually, there is something artistic, is actually can mean something, and can be actually transferred into capital sense, or economical profit or productivity. So I guess their challenge is like, and that's what they're trying to do, honestly, they're trying to find how to just not create a product, but how they can be in close collaboration and try to create something that is meaningful for those who are involved within.
A kind of prototype.
Yeah, basically, yeah, that she was using the word prototype very much. Yeah, yeah. And then for me, it works because I see it like the last one is like an entanglement of a choreography. Like it's a complex, in a way, it reminds me what you guys are doing with Floor, but then with yeah, in a different context, but like a complex setups, different setups. And then perhaps I start imagining a parkour somehow.
Yeah, and the difference is that they have to somehow land somewhere that is a prototype.
Yeah, the difference is like they should we are aiming to, or that's the goal, and it's clear, is that it should clearly communicate to the stakeholders that actually this marriage of art and science can open doors, new doors for those who actually have to work, because the people who are going to come are the executives, I guess, most of them. So are the people who in a way they have to invest in technologies and so on and policies. So they're not going to work with the technologies, but what they have to see is like those who are going to operate the technologies and so on, the digital twins of those humans, they, so the executive level should understand that there is potential. Why is this art interesting in that realm?
Yeah, I mean, we have, it's a bit similar question, let's say, that now, like, I'm working with Floor for 3 months, and then we still have 2 months left. And kind of, it's more a question for myself, is like, how can we sell this, that we have this 5 months of research, and then, like, it's good, we did research, we have a lot of like content, sketches, and all kinds of things, but then practically speaking, we have to think about, like, is it something that we can send it to a curator and they'll be interested in, like, having exhibition, or is it something like a performance? But it has to have some kind of, like
Entry
we have to
point.
communicate somehow
You have some
that
entry
makes
point.
sense to
Yeah.
them. Exactly, entry point to them.
Yeah.
And it's different for people from theater, or people from,
Yeah.
gallery, or people from conference, and we have to somehow kind of narrow down the, or like a format, what we do as a research, so the text we have, but we have to somehow like reformat it, because, like, for example, like Jan Vogt, we always talk about, well, we're in touch with, like, she's really open, and she's really like interested in this kind of open-end research, and she was also co-founder of the CCL, choreographic coding lab, so like she has this spirit, but not everyone's like that, so we have to,
No,
yeah,
that's more, but that's,
communicate.
yeah, that's absolutely, that's not the norm. Yeah. Yeah.
But thank you, Chan. Anyways, yeah. And
Yeah.
in your case, it's a bit like different kind of level, but it's a same idea, I guess. In that
I
research
think what
group.
it helps a lot, I mean, I think what it helps very much is like, so because we are talking about the same, like, like, so this maybe the different, like, that you, like, I guess you guys want to sell that or like move on with that. Like, I think in Claudia's more like she finished, and normally after she, I guess she will write a book or something like that. But is that's it. It's a project of PhD project that it has some expectations. At the end, there will be some conclusions, and that's it. But in terms of like policies and at the executive level, for instance, um, basically we both want to uh, I guess, attract people. And the people basically understand, not only attract, but the people understand us. That's what is complicated. That, I think that's what we're talking here about. Like that people understand what does it mean, what does this complexity means, basically. And I think what it makes it easy, if you want to say it, like for Claudia, is that Claudia has been working on this, I think, 8 years. You have to think about that. So she has all the fundamentals, like in terms of papers and like classical knowledge sense, I will say it, academic and the credentials to call for attention. So you guys are in a different, and we are in that place also with you and me. Like we are just, in that sense, I think you and me, we have a bit more of room than you and Flor, because we are being more consistent in that. And just now, after 2 years, we start seeing, okay, this, we are getting more fluid in the way how we do things, how we I do applications, the way how everything goes is more smooth now, because there is a lot of different things that we can do. Also, the way how our minds work are very flexible now. We can, for instance, when we talk about this paper, every time like we see like, you know what, but we can actually use this as a case to use for that. And we are getting very flexible in how we can connect all these nodes. And so, yeah, I think that this is just something that we have to take in consideration, that you guys have been working in something that is very specific now. It's physical. What you guys are doing is completely different than what you guys were doing before, in a way. Like, I mean, you guys work physical, like in the space. And even so, although it's with some internet tools and stuff, the physical component, like you guys are working on scenography, basically. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, like kind of going back to your journal or like article idea, or about our best practices as well. Like there's like the same question that, like, what do we want to sell? And I think we're getting better at this, but still, like, it's not really clear, like, who is the person that we want to sell this to, or like if you want to talk about like best practices, like what do we actually want to, what do we actually want to sell, or like what's valuable, because we have so many things that are, we think it's valid, and it is, but
Yeah.
then what is it in a nutshell? Like it's a queer conversation for oh my gosh, it's a queer form of conversation between technology and bodies, but then what is it like? Like,
What
is it
does that
something
mean?
like the
Like,
like a
what
dance?
does
Is
that
it,
mean? Like, yeah, exactly. What
yeah,
does that mean? Like, you know, like what,
yeah, also
because
like,
we understand that, you know, like what would be amazing is like if we can say that, and after following up, but something that is, you know, like that people, that we don't have to extend, you know, when I'm introduced that, I always said it's a queer form of conversation between computers and the bodies and technology. And then from there I go, I say, like, we said it's queer because, and or I will modulate my speech, because when we mention this, I have learned this in the past from questions, you know, what do you mean with queer, for instance? That was one of the questions that I have in mind. So like the last Saturday in the Dag van de Dans, where we present a hybrid version of the chat. By the way, I think the chat should just be this, man. I don't know why can we should just do this. Why cannot be? We should just basically neglect the people. I think will be easy,
I
because I
told you.
think, but it's difficult. Like, but we are not doing this. Like when we invite a third person, I think that we're talking of. Wait, we no. Let's not get out of here. We'll come back up here later. No, so in the Dag van de Dans, we have this hybrid chat somehow, asymmetric chat. And then, so when I introduce this as a queer form of conversation, then I start right away after saying about, we said that it's queer because of this and this and this, and then I start getting into something that is more complex. So would be amazing if we could just like, because I still think it makes sense for me what it is, what it, that is a queer form of conversation. But then what the fuck does that mean for other people, you know, like how we can translate that into something that my grandma understand? That will, you know, actually that we should do that. Like we should put like, I speak from the practice, not for the article, not for my research, but I think in best practices, I think we should go towards like my grandma understand from one sentence what is that we do.
Yeah.
If my grandma understand, then we are fine.
Yeah, that's
you have to make my grandma in Colombia, man. We have to prepare so much. So now
And
also
do a
going to
chat.
Colombia in September, and then so I hopefully also will be there. And so
And we do a chat.
then with my grandma. Oh my God. Uh,
So I guess we're gonna close the chat here. And
yeah, better.
if you watching watching this have better phrase, better line than the clear form of conversation between the technology and voice, please comment in the chat.
Please.
We'll steal it.
Target, dude.
Yeah, and thanks for watching. Please like the video and subscribe.
To my channel also, that it will be in
Yes,
the
in
it will
the
be
yeah.
in I'm part of like Naoto's friends channel. So please
Yeah, you can
subscribe to
check
my
out
channel.
the other channels and you can follow Jorge's channel and
Yes.
you can see all the capture stuff.
Yes, and actually that's coming is upcoming that I will be the only person in YouTube that can offer for free so far the playlist of Paxton.
Oh,
How is called this video? I forgot it again.
like
Material
spine.
for my material for the spine of
Yeah.
Steve Paxton. It will be coming
Wow,
in the coming weeks. It will be available on my YouTube channel.
I have to check that out. Yeah,
So,
cool. Then
all right.
follow us and see you in the next chat.